Welcome. I'm Dr. Neil Barnard, President of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Thank you for joining us. We're going to discuss the power of food. If you or somebody you love has diabetes, I'd like to share with you some wonderful news about the power of food to turn this condition around. The progress we've made is really astounding. Looking back a generation, my father was a doctor in Fargo, North Dakota, and he cared for people with diabetes. And back in his day, we didn't know all that we know now. When it came to food, the advice was not especially helpful, and the medications that were commonly used didn't stop the progression of the disease. Today, we know a lot more about how to prevent diabetes, how to treat it, and sometimes even how to make it go away. But first, what is diabetes? Well, simply put, diabetes is a condition where the body doesn't handle sugar very well. Sugar, that is glucose, it's the body's fuel. In the same way that gasoline powers your car, glucose powers your muscles, your brain, all the rest of you. Glucose comes from the foods you eat. It comes from sugary foods and starchy foods. And as it enters the bloodstream, your pancreas makes insulin. It's a hormone that acts really like a key. It lets the glucose from the blood pass into the cells of the body. And in diabetes, that system isn't working. Somehow, insulin is not able to get the glucose into the cells very effectively. Now, there are different kinds of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes used to be called childhood onset diabetes. In type 1, the pancreas isn't making insulin anymore. Type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes, except that now you can be 16 years old and have type 2 diabetes. In type 2, the pancreas is still making insulin, but the cells don't respond normally to it. It's as if this insulin key is having trouble opening up the lock that controls what gets into the cell. Now there's another kind, gestational diabetes. When does that occur? It occurs during pregnancy, and it's very much like type 2. It's a sign that type 2 diabetes might be right around the corner. Now diabetes can run in families, and partly that can relate to genetic traits that are handed down from parent to child. But you know what? We don't just give our kids DNA, we give them recipes. We give them tastes for certain kinds of foods. And so sometimes when diabetes runs in a family, it's caused not by genes, but by food habits that persist across generations. If you've been diagnosed with type 2, you've probably already made some changes to your eating habits. You might have been told to limit sugar and things that turn to sugar like white bread, or potatoes, or fruit, or cakes, or cookies. And if you're overweight, you might have been given a diet plan that cuts maybe 500 calories a day off your diet. Did you try that approach? Did you like it? Did it work for you? Let's start with a lesson from Japan, the country with the thinnest, longest lived people on the planet. What's the main staple in a traditional Japanese diet? It's rice. Huge amounts of rice. Now, rice has a lot of carbohydrates. Hold that thought. In 1980, the prevalence of diabetes in Japan in adults over the age of 40, it was between 1 and 5%. It was very rare. But what happened in Japan right around that time? Anybody know? That's right. Fast food. Fast food came in. And then people suddenly stopped eating rice, and they started eating burgers and fried chicken and pizza, and their diet became westernized. And they started to eat more meat, more fat, less rice, less noodles, less root vegetables. By 1990, diabetes was 11 to 12%. This tells us two things. First, rice does not cause diabetes. Secondly, diabetes is not mainly a genetic disease. Now, there are genes involved in diabetes, but did the genes change in Japan between 1980 and 1990? No. What changed was food. Now, let's take a lesson from the United States. An American diet is nothing like a traditional Japanese eating pattern. An American diet is a meat-based diet. In 1909, the USDA started tracking what Americans eat. And in that year, the average American ate 123.9 pounds of meat. That's one person, 1 year. And from there, it started going up, especially after World War II. And by 2004, the average American was eating 201.5 pounds of meat per year. That's an increase of more than 75 pounds of meat, every person, every year. By the way, what was the big increase? Beef? Pork? It was chicken. Americans now eat more than 1 million chickens per hour. Let me say a special word of condemnation for cheese. Americans weren't really eating a lot of cheese back in 1909. They only ate about 4 pounds of cheese per year on average. But the arrival of fast food chains and pizza chains really drove that figure up to about 35 pounds per person per year today. And over 70% of those calories in cheese come from fat, mainly saturated fat. That's the bad fat. Okay, let's have a look at the diabetes map. Starting in 1994, look at the top of this map. Montana, North Dakota, about 4% of adults had diabetes. And in Mississippi and Louisiana, more than 6%. As the fast food chains came in, meat consumption went up, cheese consumption went up, and here's 1995, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, you get the idea. Diabetes does not wait. When the diet changes, diabetes comes roaring in. Now for 2006, we're going to change our colors so that we can zero in on specific counties, but the map continues to worsen. Who does better? For years, researchers have studied Seventh-day Adventists because, as a group, they're generally health conscious. Nearly all Adventists avoid tobacco, they avoid alcohol, they avoid caffeine, but they vary in their diet habits, and that sets up a natural experiment. In 2009, the American Diabetes Association published these findings. This study divided not quite 61,000 Adventists into 5 groups based on the diets they had been following, and they looked at their body mass index. Are you familiar with BMI? In essence, it's your weight adjusted for how tall you are, and a healthy BMI is below 25. Now, the red bar on the left is non-vegetarians, meat eaters, and their average BMI was not below 25, it was 28.8. That's overweight. The next group, semi-vegetarians, they ate meat but less than once a week, and their BMI was a little bit lower, 27.3. The third group, pesco-vegetarians, what's that? Right, pesco, fish. Okay, so they ate fish but no other meats, and their BMI was just a hair lower, 26.3. The fourth group, lacto-ovo-vegetarians, lacto meaning dairy products, ovo meaning eggs. Okay, so they're eating eggs, dairy products, but no meat. They're a little bit slimmer, but still above 25. And who's that last group? I have to tell my patients that a vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. A vegan diet means no animal products. And have a look. They are not only the slimmest group, they are actually the only group whose BMI is smack in the middle of the healthy range. Now, look at diabetes. The meat eaters have the highest rates, the vegans have the lowest rates, and as animal products are added into the diet, the higher the diabetes prevalence. As animal products are taken out of the diet, the lower the diabetes. So in 2003, our research team began a study to see if a vegan diet could help people who already had type 2 diabetes, and we were funded by the National Institutes of Health. Half the participants followed the guidelines of the American Diabetes Association, which focused on keeping carbohydrates steady from day to day and cutting calories to lose weight. The other participants did something completely different. They began a low-fat vegan diet. That meant no animal products and keeping the oils really low. But they could have as much food as they wanted to when it came to whole grains and vegetables and fruits and legumes. To track their progress, we used a blood test called A1C. If we check blood glucose, it goes up and down minute by minute, but A1C stays more stable. It reflects blood sugar control for a period of about 3 months or so, and we want it below 7. So, focusing on people who made no changes in their medications, the group following ADA guidelines had a drop in A1C of about 0.4. That's good. But the drop in the vegan group was 1.2, which is enormous. We found some other advantages of this diet. First of all, the people were losing weight. They weren't counting calories, they weren't restricting portions, they weren't limiting their carbohydrates at all. And still they lost slightly more weight than the group that was cutting calories. Also, their cholesterol levels fell very impressively, their blood pressure came down, and a lot of our participants said, you know, this diet is easy. I don't have to count calories, I don't have to weigh things, I'm not counting carb grams. Yes, there are some new tricks to learn, don't get me wrong. There are certain things you're not going to eat at all. But you can eat unlimited amounts of grains, beans, vegetables, fruits, and all the foods that they turn into. Because of this research and a number of other studies, a plant-based diet is now in the ADA guidelines. Let's understand why a vegan diet works so well. This is a muscle cell, As you'll recall, glucose is the fuel that powers your muscles. Now, to help glucose enter the cell, insulin attaches to the surface of the cell like a key in a lock. And that triggers the cell to let the glucose inside. Here's the important part. Inside the muscle cells are tiny particles of fat. They might have come from chicken or cheese or a greasy French fry, but this fat buildup within the cell interferes with insulin. It starts to gum up the lock, so to speak. Now, researchers, they refer to it as intramyocellular lipid, but it's actually just fat inside your muscle cells. And the same thing happens in your liver. Fat in the diet leads to fat particles getting into the cells, and that interferes with insulin signaling. So the glucose can no longer get from the bloodstream into the cell so easily. So how much animal fat is there in a vegan diet? Well, there isn't any, is there? And if the diet is also really low in vegetable oils, there's not much of any kind of fat, and that, we presume, helps that fat that's inside the cell to start to dissipate, which means that insulin can start to work better. All right, so let's review how this powerful way of eating works. First of all, it's vegan. That means there are no animal products at all. And of course, some people think, well, maybe I'll just switch from beef to chicken, but the leanest beef is about 29% fat as a percentage of calories. The leanest chicken is not much better. Even with no skin, no dark meat, it's still about 23% fat. Fish vary, some lower, some are higher, some are a lot higher. Chinook salmon is about 50% fat as a percentage of calories. Now, on the other hand, a bean is about 4% fat. Broccoli, 8%. Rice is about 1 to 5% fat, depending on the variety. Sweet potatoes are about 1% fat. So most foods from plants are very low in fat. Now, in addition to avoiding animal products, we also want to keep oils very low. Why should that matter? Well, not only does fat buildup inside the cells interfere with insulin signaling, but fat is the densest source of calories. A gram of fat has 9 calories. A gram is about a 28th of an ounce. Now, in contrast, a gram of carbohydrate has only 4 calories. You'll want to remember those numbers. Fat has 9 calories in every single gram, and it doesn't matter what kind of fat it is. It has 9 calories in every gram. Got that? Okay, how many calories are there in a gram of beef fat? 9, that's right. How about chicken fat? Still 9. Fish oil? 9. Olive oil? Extra virgin olive oil? Extra virgin olive oil? Still 9. How about 1040 motor oil? Okay, don't try this at home, but if you did cook with it, it has 9 calories in every gram. Now, some people think of carbohydrates as fattening, but they have only 4 calories per gram. And if you look at countries where the diet is based on rice and other carbohydrate-rich foods, they're thin. So you want to get away from those fatty foods. Okay, so step 1 is that the diet is vegan. It avoids animal products. Step 2 is that it's really low in fat, and that really means keeping the oils low, learning non-oil cooking techniques. Let me add a third step that can really add to your benefits. It's to favor what are called low glycemic index foods. Now, that's a mouthful, but the glycemic index is just a way to show which foods make the blood sugar rise quickly and which make it rise more gently. For example, white bread will make your blood sugar rise rather quickly, but rye bread is much gentler on your blood sugar, and pumpernickel even more. So it pays to favor the foods with a low glycemic index, and we'll call them low GI foods. Now, if you were to go online and you were to search for information about the glycemic index, you would soon get a migraine, because you're going to discover a mind-numbing array of tables with all kinds of numbers that don't seem to agree with each other. And that's because the GI of any food can vary, depending on the brand, how it was prepared, all kinds of other factors. So let's keep it simple. Here's everything you need to know about the glycemic index, the GI. First of all, table sugar is high GI. Not a big surprise. Fruits are better. They give you a sweet taste with a surprisingly low glycemic index. White and wheat breads are high GI. Rye and pumpernickel are lower. White baking potatoes, high glycemic index. Sweet potatoes are lower. Most cold cereals are high glycemic index, especially if they have a toy inside. Oatmeal and bran cereals are better. And here are a few more tips for extra credit. Beans, all their relatives like lentils, peas, they're always low glycemic index, a great choice. Green leafy vegetables, too. Consider them all low. Now, pasta, spaghetti, is low glycemic index, and that's because pasta is compacted, unlike, say, bread. So the pasta actually digests rather slowly, and it releases its natural sugars only very gradually. Barley, bulgur, parboiled rice, that's converted rice, they all have a low GI value. Okay, you might be saying, wait a minute, if I have spaghetti and then I test my blood sugar, it's gone up. Well, what you'll notice is that if you just stick with it, those little bumps in your blood sugar start coming down and down and down. Now, if they don't, if it keeps spiking your blood sugar, maybe that's not the food for you. But for most people, as the days and weeks go by and the fat particles are starting to dissipate from your cells, your insulin sensitivity is starting to recover. And that means that glucose can get out of your bloodstream and into your cells, so your blood sugar starts to come down. So we're not restricting the carbohydrates from your diet, we're repairing the body's ability to handle them so that you can enjoy these foods again, okay? So stick with it. You'll see what we're talking about. Now you might be asking, does the glycemic index really matter? If I'm already avoiding animal products and I'm keeping it low fat, will it also help to use the GI? Well, Jenny Brandmiller, PhD, from the University of Sydney, answered that very question. She analyzed 14 studies that included a total of 356 participants, and she found that by choosing low glycemic index foods, you can reduce your A1C by 0.3 to 0.4 points. This is an advantage over and above the other diet changes you're making. So let's do all three. Number one, keep it vegan. We're going to focus on the 4 healthy food groups. Number 2, keep it low fat. Number 3, choose low GI foods. And that can have a dramatic effect on your A1C. Now I have to say one more important thing about the glycemic index. Be sure to use it in addition to a vegan diet, not instead of it. Once in a while a person might say, I looked online and I found out that a greasy muffin has a low glycemic index. Now that can be true, because all that grease stops the sugar from being able to get through your digestive tract quickly, but that doesn't make it healthy. Asphalt has a low glycemic index. You don't want to eat it, okay? So make sure it's vegan, then low in fat, and then use the glycemic index to sort out what's left. It's amazing to see how this diet works for weight loss. After all, you're not counting calories, you're not limiting your portions, you're not limiting carbs. How does it lead to weight loss? Well, first of all, you already know this. It's low in fat, and every gram of fat has how many calories? I can hear you. 9, perfect. So you're skipping all those extra calories. Secondly, it's high in fiber. Fiber has effectively no calories, but it fills you up, and it tricks your brain into thinking you're really full. So every time you eat vegetables or fruits or whole grains or legumes, you're eating fiber. Here are the numbers. On average, every 14 grams of fiber that you add to your diet cuts your calorie intake by about 10%. Now, on the other hand, when you're eating meat or eggs or yogurt or cheese, these animal-derived foods don't have any fiber. So you get all the calories with no fiber to trigger satiety or to turn down your appetite. You get every calorie they hold. Now, there's one other thing. Foods affect your metabolism. You know, some people say, I must have a slow metabolism. In other words, when I was 15 years old, I could eat anything, but now I just look at food and I gain weight. I know exactly what you mean. Why does this happen? Why is it that our metabolism is slowing down? Well, inside your cells are tiny organelles called mitochondria. And you might remember them from high school biology. The mitochondria inside your cells are little furnaces. They turn food into energy. If the cell is full of fat, it turns down the mitochondria. It's as if your body wants to hold on to that fat in case it needs it in the future. If you were to increase the amount of fat in the foods you eat, your mitochondria slow down within a matter of days. But what if you do the opposite? You start a low-fat vegan diet. How much animal fat are you consuming? None. If you keep the vegetable oils low, the fat in the cells starts to drain out, and your mitochondria have the chance to rebound. Now, after a meal, your metabolism normally rises as the nutrients from the food come into your bloodstream and they're used for energy. And we've measured people's calorie expenditure before and after starting a low-fat vegan diet. Remarkably, there's about a 16% increase in that after-meal calorie burn. Let me be clear about this. They've done a vegan diet, their cells change, their after-meal calorie burn actually improves, it increases. So how does this translate into foods? All right, I'm going to get up in the morning. Am I going to have bacon and eggs? I don't think so. They're not vegan. They're full of fat. They're full of cholesterol. But I can have a big bowl of oatmeal with cinnamon and raisins. How much? As much as you want. We don't use calorie limits here. And I can have half a cantaloupe. I can have some rye toast, which I slather with butter. No, hold the butter. Okay, what about lunch? Some veggie chili, lentil soup, and a salad. Or I could go to a submarine sandwich shop and get a veggie sandwich topped with lettuce and tomato and cucumbers and spinach and jalapenos and sauteed mushrooms and topped with red wine vinegar. Have them toasted. It's delicious, totally healthy. Or drop by the taco restaurant. Do I have the meat taco dripping with grease? No. But I have the bean burrito, hold the cheese. Stock some healthy staples on your shelves. Oatmeal, cans of beans or dried beans that you can cook ahead. Fresh or frozen vegetables. These are really simple foods, but you want to make sure that you got them on hand so that when you're hungry, they're there. Let's talk about getting complete nutrition. The fact is, fruits and vegetables and beans and grains bring you much better nutrition than you'd have if you were eating a meaty, dairy-filled diet. You're going to get way more vitamins, minerals, fiber, and other nutrients. But there are a few considerations that are important. First of all, for calcium. You're not having dairy products, but the healthiest sources are green leafy vegetables and beans. Beans and greens, they're calcium rich. Second, take a supplement of vitamin B12. You need B12 for healthy nerves and healthy blood, and it's not made by either animals or plants. B12 is made by bacteria. So the bacteria in a cow's gut might make some B12 that ends up in meat and milk, and on a vegan diet, you'll need to supplement B12, either as a supplement that you'll find in all drugstores or natural food stores, or fortified foods, as in B12 fortified soy milk, for example. Third, vitamin D helps you build healthy bones, and it may also be a cancer fighter. And naturally, it comes from sunlight on your skin, so if you're getting a lot of sunlight, I wouldn't worry about vitamin D. But if you're not getting regular sun exposure, it's best to take a supplement. About 2,000 international units per day is good. Be sure to see your healthcare professional and make sure that he or she knows that you're making some pretty big diet changes. As your diabetes comes under better control and your numbers come down, you might need to back off on your medications. But don't do this on your own. Your healthcare professional can help you to do it safely.
As you're getting healthier, in some cases, your medicines could become too strong. Specifically, as your body's natural insulin is working better, the medications you are taking can make your glucose or blood sugar go too low. This is called hypoglycemia. This is not likely to happen if you're controlling your diabetes just with diet alone or with metformin. But it's likely to happen if you're on insulin or certain other medications. Combined with a healthier diet, they can cause the blood sugar to dip too low. What does that feel like? You'll find yourself shaking or sweating, or you'll be hungry, or you might feel nervous or dizzy, or you might feel confused and you're not yourself. This feeling that something is not right tends to come on very suddenly, usually when it has been too long since you've had something to eat, or after lots of exercise, or sweating in hot weather. Left untreated, this can be dangerous. It can even lead to a loss of consciousness. If you have any of these symptoms, the first thing you need to do is get your glucose meter, if you have one handy. If your blood glucose or blood sugar is under 70, or under 80 or under 100, whatever target your healthcare provider has told you is too low for you, have something to eat. Then check again in about 15 minutes while resting. It's important to rest because your blood glucose could keep dropping, and you want to prevent yourself from falling or passing out. What should you eat or drink? Well, 3 or 4 glucose tablets would be great. I always recommend you carry glucose tablets. They are not something you'll be tempted to snack on, but these will get your sugars up if you need them. Or have half a cup of juice or half a cup of regular soda. Make sure it's not diet. Or have 8 to 10 Lifesavers. These are not health foods. The point is to get your blood sugar back up. Your brain needs glucose. and notify your healthcare provider so that he or she can make adjustments in your medications. By the way, it is possible for blood sugar to fall too low while you are sleeping. Signs that this has occurred include nightmares or crying out in your sleep, or finding that your pajamas or sheets are damp from perspiration, or waking up with unusual tiredness, confusion, or irritability. If these occur, you can check for nighttime hypoglycemia. Just set your alarm for about 2 or 3 in the morning and check your blood sugar. If you are low, let your healthcare provider know about it. You may need a medication change. Hypoglycemia does not mean there's anything wrong with you or with your new way of eating. Rather, it means that the medications that you're on have become too strong.
So there you have it. This new way of eating will help you feel better. It'll help you lose weight. It'll help you control your glucose and prevent complications of diabetes. And ask your Food for Life instructor if you have any questions. They're going to be a great resource for you. Thanks a lot.